and today's inspiration. And today we're going to talk about languages, but it's so much more than just vocabulary flashcards. So if you came here looking for vocabulary flashcards, that will be covered a little bit, but this is going to be kind of moving beyond that a little bit. And my name is Maureen Lamb. I'm a Latin and Ancient Greek teacher, a language department chair, and an academic technology coordinator at the King's of Oxford School in West Hartford. For accessibility reasons, if you would like to follow along with the slides at your own pace, you can go to this URL, tinyurl.com/Quizlet Languages 2021. Again, that's tinyurl.com/Quizlet Languages 2021. So, could somebody type that in the chat for me? That would be super duper helpful. Thank you so much. You're the best. Wonderful. And so here is our agenda for today. And if this seems like something you're interested in, stick around. So first we're going to do doing it with diagrams. How do you spice up your sets with diagrams? Revving it up with rich text. Keeping your options open with multiple choice. Sound advice, how to use sound in Quizlet. And finally, variations on gamification. And just in case you're interested, all of these are links to the different sections. So if you come back to this slide deck as a resource, you can actually go back and let's say I wanted to look up more about diagrams, I would click on that and it would take me right to the diagrams page. Does that make sense? Okay. And so first, and same with all of these. So diagrams as homework check takes you to diagrams as homework check, etc. And so we're going to look at diagrams as a homework check, which is one of my favorite ways to use it. Diagrams for map study, which I also use a lot. Diagrams for timelines, diagrams for pictures. We're going to do an example of how to blur out in diagram for fill in the blank, also how to blur out in diagram for predictive text. Then we're going to look at text analysis questions with highlight and vocabulary in context with highlight. So these are all things we will be looking at with diagrams. And so one of the first things I really like to do is to use it as a homework check. And so let's take a look here. I'm going to stop sharing this and open up my Quizlet so you can take a look at how this works. Okay, give me 1 second, sorry. And I know a lot of people were interested in maps yesterday, which is why I chose to add maps again today. So I can go over that in a little bit more depth. And look, oh, here's our friend, the map. So we're going to go back here and I'll show you what a homework check might look like. And so as a language teacher, sometimes I give out worksheets, sometimes I give readings, something like that. And so what I'd like to do here is show an example. Let's say I wanted students to identify different things within the text. So I'd ask a series of questions about the text as a homework assignment. Then what I might do is add this. This is the homework assignment. This is what students had to read for homework. And now I'm going to edit this set. So we can take a look at what I did with the diagram. Now this diagram is just a screenshot of the text that I'm reading with the students. This is a completely open source text that I'm using, but if I weren't using an open source text, or I wasn't using something like that, or I was creating my own worksheet, then I would take a screenshot of a Google Doc or something that I had typed into and add it here. Then for each problem, let's say I wanted them to identify, the term is Hector, and I would say, who is the Prince of the Trojans? And maybe my question was, who is the Prince of the Trojans? And I put the answer in there as well. And you can do it flipped around if you want to. And so then I could add a point there to do that. And so you can even do this with a worksheet. Let's say I had a worksheet one. Let me go back here. So let's say I was going to open up a worksheet with questions that I wanted my students to answer. Let's find one. Oh, okay. So this is a tense review. So my homework for students here would be identify the different tenses of these verbs. And so then they'd have to write them out. And so when we got to class the next day, what I'd have students do is play a Quizlet live using the diagram, and they would identify all of the tenses in context here. And then they would have this as a resource to come back to if they had any trouble on the homework or they wanted to review it in any way. All right, I'm going to stop sharing for a sec to take any questions on this. Yes, I think if you're allowed to use textbook assignments, absolutely. I do this with worksheets that I've created as well, and that is really, really helpful. Absolutely. So if I have a bunch of sheets, so for example, when I have, oh, somebody raised their hand. Question, yes. The student view of these functions. So that's a really, okay. Those are a bunch of questions. All right, so give me 1 second. So the student view of the game would be the same, or the diagram would be the same as if I created it. So I'm creating the diagram right now. And then you do the wonderful sharing. And here, my students would see this as they hovered over each of these things. But they would also see the definitions at the bottom and the location within the diagram. To play Quizlet Live, you click on Live. And then you can select if you want it to be individual or random teams. And we'll go over Quizlet Live a little bit later. Let me see if there are any other specific questions. Yes. How did I make it? I took a screenshot of this. Yes, you can use JPEGs and PDFs. I just really prefer to use screenshots because I think it looks really clear. And I think that sometimes the upload process, something can be too big or too small. So I find that screenshots work really well for me. Oh, someone asked a question. How do you take something out of draft mode? You have to press, that's a good question and a really important question. You have to press create. That's a really good question to make it out of draft mode here. There's a lot of different questions. I hope I'm answering enough. And if I don't get to your answers, let me know. Oh, Lisa asked a good question. How do you take a screenshot? Well, on a Mac, it's super easy. It's Command-Shift-4. I'm not sure what it is on a PC. That's a good question. Okay, I'm going to move on. If you have additional questions, you can't, let me see. So this person asks, are you able to see data for individual students? On Quizlet Live, yes, you can see what they answered, but if you have big classes like mine, it might be difficult to tell which students which until the very end. Oh, and how do I add the blue circles or highlights? Yes, I will definitely go over that. Thank you. How do I add those? And how do I upload the screenshots? Excellent question. Okay, I think I'm going to just show that first. So let's say I'm creating a new study set. I am going to choose an image. So right now I did a screenshot of a text that I'm working on with my students. You can see there's a lot of unorganized screenshots in here. Now I'm going to upload the screenshot. Again, on a Mac, it's Command-Shift-4, and then I can outline something. Here, I can even show you how to do that super quickly. So I click on this tab, and let's say I wanted to upload this. So I'm hitting Command-Shift-4 right now. It's taking the screenshot, and now the screenshot is saved to my computer. I'm not going to answer questions right now. I see a lot of people in the chat. I'm going to take a quick look at what's going on. Thank you so much, Gary, for saying it's Control plus PRT screen. I'm not sure what that is. You can use a snipping tool as well. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. You're all, oh, print screen. Thank you so much. You're all helping each other. I appreciate that. And so now I'm going to add the screenshot here as the image. Now, someone also asked, how do you add points to this diagram? So let's say I wanted to add, I can add a point anywhere in this diagram. So let's say I wanted to say inter, and I wanted to put the term inter, And my definition is takes the accusative, because that's what I wanted my students to know here. And I could add that here. So now that's not only added here, but it's added as a term below here as well. So you can see that. Additionally, let's say I wanted to add a box. I might ask a question here. So I've boxed this, and then I might write erat nino duo itinera. If I'm misspelling things, sorry. And I would say the question, how many ways were there? And if you read the Latin, you know there are 2. And so that might be another type of question. You can also add a shape. Now, a shape isn't too very terribly helpful here. I might do it for something like this if I wanted to go and do this whole section here. And so, and then you click on the original one to add the shape. And I would say, how many days is it? And you could say 5 days before the calends of April. Again, this is getting more into the textual analysis part of it, but I think this is all really helpful stuff. Now, the other thing that people really enjoy doing, or I enjoy doing, and I've told people about it and they like it, is you can blur text as well. So you can't blur text from here, but if you click on this pencil in the upper right-hand corner, you can click on this globe with dots on it and blur out text. And so you might want to have students predict what's going to happen next. And so here, I might blur this out, and then I might go back. I will approve that, save the change of blurring. So now that image is blurred out permanently there, and I might put in a question there. So I'm going to add a dot above there, and I would say, what river are they going to? And students should know from the map we did that they're going to the Rhone River. And that's what I blurred out from the text. So students are predicting what's going to happen in the text given the context of what they're doing. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break because I see I have a bunch of questions here. Oh, okay. Hold on one second. Okay, wonderful. I have, okay, a lot of people are asking about screenshots, but I think people were answering that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's so kind. Yes, it automatically works on regular Quizlet. Someone asked, do diagrams work automatically on regular Quizlet? Yes, and even in the free version. However, in the free version of Quizlet, you are limited to 8 points. So for each diagram, you can only add 8 points with the free version. So it really depends on what you want to do. Michelle has asked, do you need to have the paid Quizlet to add color or highlight text? I have the free version. If you want to add highlights to the text below, and I'll show you about that when I go over rich text, yes, you need the paid version. However, if you want to highlight something in the diagram, no, you do not need the paid version for that. Good questions. Okay, I'm just checking one more thing to see if there are any more questions in there, and then we will move on. Okay, just checking the chat quickly. Okay. Oh, thank you, Corinne. Corinne just said you get yellow highlight for free with the free version. Thank you so much. And thank you for your advice, Denise. I'm going to take questions in between sections because I think that's most helpful for people, but I appreciate your advice. Okay. Moving on, thank you for your patience. And while I'm getting the presentation uploaded again, someone asked which books will be uploaded as textbooks in Quizlet. And that is a question that would be for Jose. I don't know the answer to that question, but that's an excellent question. And I'm wondering the same thing about Latin textbooks. It would be very cool to have Latin textbooks up there, but who knows? Next, we're going to talk about using diagrams for map study. So first we did homework check. Now we're going to do map study. So I love using blank maps from Google Images. And a lot of these are from Wikipedia, so they're open source, so you can just use the map. But really any maps that you have access to and can freely use, you can use as an image. Again, I usually take a screenshot of it, but you can also upload it. And let me show you an example of what a map might look like. Oh, feel free to ask a question. You don't need to raise your hand. Okay. So going back to see the maps. Okay, so this is an example. I was reading Hannibal, The Life of Hannibal by Cornelius Nepos. And this is a map that I was using to have students understand the different places where Hannibal was traveling to and their location around the Mediterranean, which was really fun. And so what I did, and please feel free to ask a question. I can't do the hand raising right now because it's only one of me, but I'm going to keep going. And so what you do is you upload it just like you would upload any other image. And I'll show you when I'm editing. And so here I had a blank map. And so I know that there are the seas in there, but let's say, for example, I wanted students to know what the Ionian Sea was, and I already had Ionian Sea on the map. What I would do then is I would actually blur out Ionian Sea. And so I'm going to click this edit button, and I am going to blur out Ionian Sea. Hey, it's not really working on me. Okay, there we go. There we go. And now I'm going to save it by pressing this check button. And now I'm going to put a dot over where the Ionian Sea was. And if it were in Greek class, I'd write the definition in Greek. If it were in Latin class, I'd write the definition in Latin. Then I would add the point. But you don't need to enter a definition. You can just have a diagram in terms. All right. And then when you're done, you press done. And that will make it so the draft is now live and you can share it with people. That was another question I had. Oh, Toshiko said you entered words in the term and a question in the definition. Where do students answer in the questions and where do they see the correct answers? Usually I use these for Quizlet Live. That's a really good question. So I actually switch back and forth between definitions and words and back and forth. And you can do that when you're editing by doing this. Let me see. So let's see, is it here? I can't remember where it is, but you can actually switch back and forth. Yep, there you go, flip terms and definitions. So I flip back and forth. I see them both as like the two things on a card that you're flipping back and forth. And so sometimes you want to go from one to one or one to the other. So that's a good question, but usually I use these for Quizlet Live. So it really depends on how I want students to be asked the questions and if they want to do it backward Jeopardy style where you have the answer and give the question, or either way. And again, here you can flip the terms and definitions if you'd like. Both are good. Someone asked, Andrew asked, if there are ancient Greek fonts available to use in Quizlet. Why, yes, there are. And Lori, I will get to Quizlet Live at the end. That's when we do the gamification section. Ask, good question. So now if, so let's say, for example, I wanted to do Greek. I would go to Greek and then I would have the Greek alphabet here. So it's not quite a Greek font, but here you can see the different Greek you can use. I usually use a site I can actually send you if you want to email me, and then you can copy and paste the Greek. That's what I usually do. Here's another, someone said, Maureen, you started by saying you use diagrams for homework check. So you give them the map the night before and then play Quizlet live with them the next day? Yes, exactly. That's how I do it as a homework check. That's exactly right. I don't know if you can use IPA for Greek. That's a good question. When you do Quizlet live, is this diagram visible? I don't know. I usually use it for review. Let's see if you can make it visible. That is a good question. Yes, you can. Look at that. You can show the location of the map. So yes, you can. So they won't be able to see the whole diagram, but they'll be able to see the location on the diagram. Excellent question. Okay, let's go to the next one. I know I have a lot of questions in here and I'm doing the best I can. So thank you so much for your patience. Okay. So next we're going to take a look at timelines. Now, same thing, I take a screenshot of this and someone might ask where I create these timelines. I usually create these timelines or other images similar to this in either Google Drawing or Google Slides. Then I take a screenshot or I download it and then I upload it to Quizlet in diagrams. And so this would be a timeline that my students have already studied, and then they would have to identify different terms within that timeline. All right, so that's how I would do that. I also use diagrams for pictures. So these are two examples that I've used in class before. I had students identify the different rooms and terms of a Roman bathhouse in Latin. And that was really, really helpful for students because these were all definitions in English. And this is something I called the Greek face because I was trying to teach students what the different parts of a Greek face were by using Greek terms. And so we were doing a lot of Simon Says and kind of touch this, touch that. But then I wanted to do something with Quizlet Live, and that was a way to really solidify that for students. And we already did blur out for fill in the blank, and we already did blur out for predictive text. And also another thing I like to do is I showed you the highlight function. Now I might ask textual analysis questions with that highlight function. So for example, here I have uploaded this from a worksheet and students are asked questions in context. So for example, I might say, what form is clarissimus? And then someone might have to say superlative adjective. I would say, when was the question asked? And they would have to reference the Latin quodam die and say, on a certain day. Vehementius, they might have to say means more vehemently. So there's a lot of different things that you could ask. You could even ask them to summarize what happens in these two lines and have a quick summary on Quizlet that they can pick from. I see a few questions, so let me stop share for a second so I can look at the questions. I'm finding it difficult to see. Yes, absolutely, it could be comprehension questions on the text. And yes, you could do it with, I love that, cell cycle events, digestion pathway, all of those things. You can use it with numbers, you can use it with all sorts of things. So please, there are so many different things. Really, the sky's the limit. If you can have a picture of it, you can use it as a diagram. I love to start class with it. So if I had students reading a part of the Aeneid, I might use a painting of the Aeneid and have students identify what's going on in the painting. If you're someone who's doing textual analysis, or even if you have someone doing a problem set, you could take a picture of your problem set, upload it to Quizlet, and then have students put in their, try to put in the correct answers. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Oh, Catherine asked a good question. I'm assuming you have classes set up in Quizlet and assign these activities as homework. These are actually mostly in-class activities. The other activities, but I do have classes set up in Quizlet, that's true. But a lot of these are in-class activities because I really like using Quizlet. Oh, someone asked a question. Could you please explain a little more about the diagram of the face and body parts? Sure. I was trying to teach students because we were reading a poem that included a lot. We were reading a Sappho poem that included a lot of different parts of the Greek body and the Greek face. And I wanted students to have some knowledge of what is nose in Greek, what is mouth in Greek, what is ears in Greek, what are eyes in Greek. And so when I was uploading the picture, I was having students identify the different things. So for example, I would say, the Greek word for nose, and then the definition would be nose. And so that way students could learn those things. And someone just asked if this webinar will be made available later for recording. Yes, and at the end, I will also share the slide deck again and my contact information. And I absolutely mean it. If you have questions after this, please reach out to me. I said yesterday, last year I had over 100 emails after my first presentation, and I got back to all of them. So please, please feel free to reach out or reach out on Instagram or Twitter. I'm very happy to share and answer any questions you have. All right, so let me share my screen once more. Okay. So another thing I love to do is vocabulary in context. I never give a vocabulary quiz that's just terms and definitions. It's always contextualized in the context of a listening exercise or the context of reading exercise or a watching exercise. And so this is a way I can do it with a reading exercise. But another cool thing I'll mention in a few minutes is you can do it with listening as well, which is so exciting. So next we're going to talk a little bit about rich text. This is going to take this is a little bit quicker, but I just want to show you some pictures of how I'm using the rich text within Quizlet. So for example, I just want to be as clear as possible with students when I'm doing things like this. So for example, this is right from the text they've read for homework. Ego volo furare. What form is furare? And they'd have to say it's an infinitive. And again, just by I'm highlighting, I'm underlining, and bold. You might think it's a little bit overkill, but I just want to be as clear as possible for students so they know exactly what they're identifying. So that really helps, I think. Another thing I like to do is do characters in context. So for example, we read a story about different characters. And so Zeus was one of the characters that we were reading about in Greek class. You'll notice the Greek script. And so in the context here, we have Zeus identified and a picture to go with it. You can also do this within a diagram. Let's say that you have pictures of characters from a book you're reading. Then you can have students identify the different characters below. Or let's say you have characters in a short story and you want to share the short story as a diagram. Let's say it's a page. Then you can have students identify the characters. Or you can even do something I've done before is do a bunch of quotes from the text, take a picture of that and create a diagram and have students identify which character said that quote below as the different terms. So those are all possibilities for this. Also, someone asked about this before, but you can do old-fashioned sentence diagramming. And I have done this before. So this is about, so we have the use of underline here for the subject. We have mortuum and scriptum, as they're both bold and in the accusative here. And analisuo is italicized, and that is in the ablative. Now, something to keep in mind. This is not always great for neurodivergent students. Sometimes when students have different neurodiversity, they can't see italics or they can't see underline as well. And so I think, number one, it's always really important to communicate with your students and see what works best for them. And also there are students who see color differences. And so make sure that this color scheme works for them. I have found that this particular color scheme with the blue and the pink and the yellow has worked pretty well with my students with color differences in terms of how they see color. But I would really communicate with your students about this and see what works best for them if you're doing an activity with this rich text. Finally, there are accent options. And I love so much that when I write sic vir fortissimus, it automatically recognizes that it's Latin and it gives me all these beautiful macrons and diphthongs to use. So it does this for many, many languages. You can look and see if your language is included. I bet most of them are. For Latin, unfortunately, for the speaking, it's not included, and for the Greek as well. But at least they include the accent marks, which is nice. Next, we're going to talk very briefly about multiple choice options. And I'll show you where you can find this on Quizlet. And as I'm switching over, I'm going to just take a look at questions for a second. Images are available in the, you can only upload your, Sherry just asked, aren't images only available in the paid version? Images are available in the free version, but you can't upload your own images. And Carlos just asked, is there a way to not make sets visible until a certain time or make it not visible once you publish it? That's a really good question. You can edit it and not save the draft. And you can just save a bunch of drafts, as you saw what I did. I love to save drafts, and then as soon as I'm ready for it, I publish it. I create it, I click done, and then it works. I see a couple more questions. Yes, if you have the diagram, so this says, when you have a diagram with all the dots that then becomes multiple questions and flashcards with the kids, correct? Yes, that is correct. Excellent. Ooh, here's a question. When they identify answers, do they have to write it or say it? If write it, where do they write it? That's a good question. It really depends on which type of review you're using. That's something I'm going into a little bit more later on. So please just hold on a second. And if I don't get to your question, please feel free to let me know. Okay. Sharing screen again. Oh no, wrong one. I meant to share the other screen. Hold on. Okay, so let's say, for example, you're doing this and you want to edit these. And you're going to go into the big edit, actually. And let's say you wanted to give your students multiple choice sections, but you didn't want it to be too easy. So let's go to this one. So we did this one as Ionian Sea. I'm not going to enter the Greek here. What I am going to do is go here. Okay, I'm going to just pretend. There we go. And what I'm going to do if I want to enter multiple choice questions is, oh no, it's not working for me for some reason. Hold on one second. I don't know why this isn't working. Hey, why aren't you working? Well, this isn't showing me multiple choice. Let me go to another set. Mea culpa. My apologies. This is an older set. That might be part of it. Okay, here we go. Let us jump on. Ooh, this looks like fun. Let's jump on here. All right, so I'm going to edit this, and then to get to multiple choice, it's usually pretty simple. Click on here and look, add multiple choice questions. Now, why would you want to add multiple choice questions when it will create multiple choice questions automatically? Maybe you want to make it a little harder because you want the answers to be a little closer to what you might do. So for example, this is for AP Latin. I might do answers that are a little bit closer to what the translation might actually be, to try to have my students see that there are actually two roots. There were not two ways for all or something like that if they were going to mistranslate omnino, or I might think they were going to mistranslate errant as sunt or something like that. I don't know. I would do different translation options here that might be a little closer to what that answer would be. Then when I'm done with this and I'm going to play a game with this, let's say I wanted to go over learn, those multiple choice options would appear. So here you can see how easy this would be, because you would figure out that few were able to prevent them easily, as opposed. So if I were to do this, there would be options that would be more applicable. And it would also probably switch it so that they were answering in English, because that would be where I'd put the multiple choice questions. So if you're thinking of using multiple choice and I didn't go over enough for you, feel free to reach out to me and I can give you some more examples of multiple choice here. That's a really good question. Oh, somebody just, Janae was talking about files. Yes, files are amazing in your classes. They're just such great organizational tools. So here I have a bunch of classes, but I also have folders to keep stuff in. So I keep the different sets for different topics there. So that can be really, really helpful for organizing. So there's just not 100 Quizlets in your class. So that can be a really helpful strategy for organization. And I'll be talking about that a little bit later this afternoon. I'm doing another section from 1:45 to 2:45 Eastern time. So if you want to stop by, I'll be doing a bit more with that. So feel free to stop by that and get more answers about how to do that. Okay, let's keep going. So I'm going to share my screen again. And here we go. So now we're going to talk about sound. Sound is such a cool feature of Quizlet. And one of the things I wanted to talk about today was alternative text for pictures with sound. So if you have a picture, I find that sometimes my students don't understand why I'm using a certain picture for a vocabulary word. So rather than doing the definition and saying it in English, I'll just describe what's going on with the picture. So if I were to do, let's say, the word Felix, and I was to say the definition is happy, and I wrote that out, then my sound recording would be, there is a picture of a happy face, so that someone would know, okay, Felix, happy, just so that my students had that more clear. But you could do it with other examples as well. So for example, if you're trying to do something with a diagram and it's showing the different place in a diagram, maybe it might be helpful for students, rather than it says Ionian Sea and then it says the word in Greek, like rather than repronouncing Ionian Sea, instead record on the map in the lower right-hand corner between Greece and Italy, or something like that, just so that students can hear that and see it at the same time. It gives them more context. You can also use it for listening exercises. So again, rather than saying the definition, perhaps ask a question as a term, and then record yourself doing some sort of listening exercise that students have to listen to. And then the answer to that question would then be the definition. You can also use it for pronunciation of text. And I'm going to go to student oral responses in a second. And if you're wondering how to record, I'm going to show you with student oral responses. Pronunciation of text, there are some Quizlet pronunciations in there. I know for particular subjects that I teach, Latin and ancient Greek, there is no pronunciation. So if you're looking for that, you're not going to find it. But for a lot of other languages, is already pronunciation built in. And again, like I said, speaking text to engage more senses for the students is always super helpful. And I'll talk a little bit about how I do student oral responses. So I know I have a lot of questions right now, and I will get to you in 1 minute. So what I'm going to do is show you what I might do. So I might ask students I want to hear them pronounce Latin. So I might ask them to make a copy of this and then record themselves saying the Latin. That way I could hear how they're doing. Or you could go even a step further with this, and rather than having them record the target language, have them read a question in the target language that you write, and then instead of definition, write record answer here, and then have students record. And I'm just going to show you how easy it is to record here. And with a paid account, you can record. So press the add voice recording, and it's super easy. All you do is hold down the space bar. Hold down the space bar to record. As soon as you lift it up, it saves. Hold down the space bar to record. So that is that. And again, if you have students make a copy of a set, then they can actually turn that in as a link in Google Classroom, which is so easy. So I've done that for listening exercises. I've done that for students pronouncing the Latin. I've had them do it for all sorts of things with languages. So really, there are a lot of different things you can do with this. Yes, recording is only in the paid version. I find that most of my students actually have their own paid versions, and that's why I'm able to do this. It's also pretty cost effective. I think it's something like $10 or $12 a year for students to have an account. So it's a pretty cost effective thing for students to have, and they can record their own audio. And again, someone is asking, how do I listen to those student recordings? And what I do is I have them submit the link to their recording. So they've taken my Quizlet set, they have copied it, and they've added their own recordings. Then they press done and they share that link with me on Google Classroom as their homework. So that's really helpful. And Ashley Williams said Flipgrid. Yes, Flipgrid is another way for students to do recordings. That is another option. Okay, I'm going to keep going now. Thank you to the people who keep answering other people's questions. That is so very helpful. I appreciate that so much because you know I can't read everything. So thank you for that. Now, I have a lot more to go, but I'm not going to be able to get through it all because I'm going to have to end soon to do all questions. So I'm going to go through as much as I can, and we're down to gamification. So I'm going to talk about this briefly and then let you answer questions. So there are many different ways you can do Quizlet Live. I loved the old group version, but that became really hard during the pandemic. So what I like to do is have students do the individual version, but if I do the group version in class, then I have students do a little bit of a variation on it. So again, there are many different individual games students can play. They can play Learn, Flashcards, Write, Spell, and Test, which are all not timed, which is nice. I have some students who really don't like being timed. Then there's Match, which is timed, and Gravity. And Match is pretty fun because students have a leaderboard. So for some students, they're really motivated by that competition. Other students don't like that at all. So really, when it comes to students reviewing individually, I let them choose their preference when they're doing that. However, when we're doing it in a group with Quizlet Live, or they're doing it individually, but kind of in a group. And again, I put Match in here because there's a leaderboard. I like to do these with the groups. So for example, if I have a group, they play Quizlet Live silently with gestures. So it almost becomes like charades. They have to act out either what's happening on the term or act out the vocabulary words, something like that. So another thing I like to do is pictures. I'll pass out whiteboards and have students draw pictures to make it a version of Pictionary and show each other pictures, and they can't use words, so they couldn't actually write idea there. They would have to just use the pictures. Another thing I like to play is Around the World. And this is, I have students sitting at different places all around the classroom and talking to each other. And so they're not allowed to move their seats to sit in groups. This is a very noisy version. And an alternative to Around the World is I have students sit in groups, but they can only speak in the target language. This is actually my favorite one to do, where they all speak in Latin or ancient Greek, or they do words in Latin and ancient Greek if they're my first years, because that really helps them to kind of get a sense of how to speak the language. Finally, you can export to different things like Blukit. I keep messing it up. It sounds like Book It to me. So Blukit and Gimket you can have. And so you export to that. I'll show you briefly how to do that, and then I'll take some questions. I know I have a lot of questions in the chat right now. And someone is talking about different ways to do different games. And I have to say, something that I really like to do is vary up the games. I use Quizlet Live probably at the beginning of class. And sometimes I really like to do something like Blukit or Gimkit at the end of class. So I really like to do it as much as possible to break up the class. I teach 75-minute blocks. And so I find playing a 5-minute game in between kind of sections of class really helps to review. Yes, you can. A great question here. S. Roth asks, can you export to Google Classroom? And I would say absolutely. You can just share to Google Classroom, which is really, really helpful. And I can show you that in 1 second. Let me show you this. Okay, so let's say I am done with this particular set. So I'll show you two different things. When I'm done with this set, I can share it. You can share it to one email at a time. I'm usually sharing something with lots of students at once. So I would actually not use this all that often. What I might do is copy a link and send an email to a bunch of people in a link. But most often, because I use Google Classroom at my school, I would share on Google Classroom. You can also share on Remind. Remind is something I started using during the pandemic because I found that my students were checking their texts more than they were checking their emails. So that was really helpful to me. You can share on Microsoft Teams as well. And let's say you're doing it directly to Classroom, you would click on this and it would give you the link to Classroom. So you could actually see that you are sharing it. You could choose the class you're sharing it to and whether you're sharing it as an assignment or if you're sharing it as kind of a resource. Okay, so the other thing I want to show you is how to export it. So you go to these, so from here, you go to your set and then you go to these three dots. You go down to export. From here, you press copy text, or if you are on a PC, you could do Control C, or if you're on a Mac, you could do Command C. So when you copy that text, then you can take it to BlueKit or GimKit, and when it says create with flashcards, you hit either Control V or Command V, and there's all your text. And one thing I really like about this is that you can choose how you want everything separated. So let's say here it has a tab between term and definition. You can also have comma between term and definition. You can also have a semicolon between others if you don't want new line there. So that's something I like to do. For those of you who use GoFormative, I also like to embed them in GoFormative as a warm-up activity. So if you're interested in learning more about that, either watch my presentation from yesterday or email me. I'm happy to help with that. So let me just show you my contact information before I take more questions. So please, please, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, you can find all the slides for this presentation at tinyurl.com/Quizlet Languages 2021. So on Twitter, I'm at Latin Tech Tools. Feel free to give me a follow and DM me if you have any questions. On Instagram, I'm Latin Tech Tools, and shockingly, my email is also latintechtools@gmail.com. So I'm going to keep this up, and I'm just going to answer some more questions now. With our limited time, we only have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to look at the questions and answers ones first. Okay, I have no new questions and answers. Let's see. Is there a way to see results for Quizlet Live? You can see the top results and then you can see the leaderboard, but I don't know if you can see all of the results. That's a good question. I think students can see their own results. Well, I'm going up again. Yes, you can absolutely export to Schoology for Quizlet. Absolutely. I use that in my graduate school classes that I teach. Quizlet doesn't link to Canvas, but you can use a link for Quizlet on Canvas. Someone asked, what's the advantage of share over export? When would you use export and when would you use share? Share would be if you're sharing to something like Google Classroom or Remind, or if you're sharing to emails. If you're exporting to something like a game like BlueKit or GimKit or Quizzes, something like that. The other thing you can do is you can embed it. And that would be something you would do if you're embedding it in a site or GoFormative or something like that. Let's see. Catherine, you said it. Could I explain in more detail the games that I play? Catherine, please feel free to email me. The print options, interesting. You can print. I can show you that very quickly. Let me show you that. And again, feel free to reach out. So from here, you can see there are print options. Can you see the print options on my computer? I don't know if you can actually. So what I like to do is rather than print, I sometimes will save it as a PDF to help me, but you can find a lot of things under these lovely three dots here. And customize basically means you copy a set. You can see the scores that people who have taken it have gotten on this. You can combine sets, export, or embed. All of those are options. And I'll be talking about that a little more later today if you want to come by that session. Oh, okay. Thank you. Someone let me know they have another Q&A. Okay, I have to let people go in just a minute here. Yes, you do. For Remind, you do have to enter student phone numbers. That's a really good question. Oh, okay, so Bridget, I think I understand your question a little better. It will link to your Remind account. So if your student numbers are already in there, you should be all set. All right. Like I said, please, please, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if I can explain anything further. Thank you so much for coming, and let me know how I can help. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.